I'd like to start off the sugya and just start from the beginning and try to explain where people are supposed to light today in Chutz La'aretz, and if there's any hidur to go ahead and do something that you didn't see by your grandparents, to light outside, or to get yourself a screen door and light by the door, or anything like that. And from that will lead to hopefully discussing the Zman Hadlaka that a person's obligated to do now, that if you're lighting inside or you're lighting outside, are you mechuyev to be medayek on the Zman to be exact, or if you're lighting inside, you aren't mechuyev. So that will be the discussion today, Mitzvah Hashem. Mitzvah D'Shmaya. The Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, says, Tanu Rabbana Ner Chanukah Mitzvah La'anicha Al Pesach Beisa Mibachutz. The person shall light it outside in Mayadar Ba'ali if he's on the second floor. Manicha B'chaloin Asmucha L'Shusarabim. He lights it on the window. So B'shasa Sakana Manicha Al Shulchana V'daya. The time of a sakana, you light it on your dining room table, and that's enough. So the question is, which the Rishonim have a big debate, is what is it called sakana that we're discussing, that we took away the mitzvah from lighting bechutz, and instead of lighting outside, you light inside. What is this sakana referring to? So Rashi says that the Parsim, they were makpid, that they should only light in their houses. And the Meiri is bothered with this. So if so, it was sakanas nefashos. The Meiri understands in Rashi that they would get killed if they would light. If they would light sakanas nefashos, how can you light on in your house? You shouldn't light at all. They should be mavatal the mitzvah. They should give away the mitzvah because of sakanas nefashos. And the Bach goes ahead and explains that it wasn't just the Gzeir on Klal Yisrael, it was also Gzeir on other nations. And he has a whole arichas how to explain Rashi, but I'll go upon him. Pashtus, the way the Rishonim and the Achronim understand Rashi, is that you should light. The reason why we stopped lighting outside was because it was Hakanas Nefashis. Taisvis, on the Memhei Amar Aleph, Divrei Maschal Mekameh, he brings on the Ri, that the Sakana was Gzeira Shegazu Shloi Lahadlik Ner Chanukah. Now what does that mean, Gzeira Shegazu Shloi Lahadlik Ner Chanukah? They didn't want you should be light in Ner Chanukah. What was that all about? And if you look at that same Bach, which is in Tafresh Ayin Aleph Sivkat Mches, over there he explains Taisvis. He understood Taisvis that it's Gzeira Hashmad, and therefore he's bothered with the question that we hold that any Gzeira Hashmad, we don't bend even a mashu to listen to what the Gzeira is, and therefore he says a different shot. But upon him, as of now, we have Rashi that learns that it's Sakanas Nefashis, and Taisis that learns that it's Gzeira Hashmad. And when the Gemara says B'shasa Sakana Manicha Al Shulchanai, is referring to either a real sakana of sakanas nefashis or gzeis hashmad. And the Ritva is from the first Rishonim that say, no, sakana is lav dafka. What does it mean, sakana? Sakana means sakana tsar oy eva. That's what he writes on the Chaf Aleph Amud Beis. And the Memhei Amud Aleph, he goes and he explains another sakana, sakanas mamain. So he has three sakanas that he explains when the Gemara said sakana is madlika al shulchanai, is referring either tsar, eva, which is an abused word, eva, or sakanas mammon. And then the Ritva goes along and continues, and he says lafika chaya aimer shekishanoishev ruach she efshel adlika bechutz madlika b'fnim bebeisei. When it's windy outside, and I can't light outside, madlika b'fnim bebeisei. Now, which translation does that go into sakana? Sakana, we had Rashi that said literal sakana, sakanas nefashis. We had Taisis that said shmad. We had the Ritva that came along and made it even lighter for us, easier for us, and he said sakanas tsar, eva, mammon. Fine, that we could understand. We could put that into those words of the Gemara that said sakana. But how does the Ritva take from there and say that not only is sakana, also when it's windy outside, you could be madlik b'chutz? And it's not only the Ritva. There been a prachya, another Rishon, he says, if it's windy outside, it's raining outside, then manicha shulchanai v'daya. It says the same thing as the Ritva. The Siddur ben Amram Gayan also writes, nishba ruach, manicha shulchanai, if it's windy. Sefer Ma'aris, another Rishon. So we have already four Rishonim that work with these terms, that if it's windy outside, madlika, when you can't light it outside, light it inside. Now again, so which term of sakana does that go into? The Gemara says you're obligated to light outside. If it's a sakana, we will matter on lighting inside. So how could the Rishonim go ahead and stretch that word sakana to include when it's windy outside? The pshat is that once we see that the Chachamim gave a leniency to the hadlaka b'chutz, which means that till the Chachamim, till the Shas Sakana came along, Chachamim said the mitzvah is b'chutz and you cannot do it any other place. It's not just that if you do it someplace else, you get the mitzvah, just not in the right place. When the Chachamim said the hadlaka is b'chutz, meant that that is where the kiyum hadlaka is. It's not just a chatimtza that has to be b'chutz. That is the only kiyum hamitzvah. Now that the Chachamim came along and gave a new place for the kiyum hamitzvah, b'fnim, what they say by doing that? They didn't just say that I actually could light b'fnim. They said that no, there's a kiyum mitzvah, that it's not anymore that kiyum mitzvah b'chutz. I'm giving a new place for you to be mekayim the mitzvah, which is b'fnim. Obviously, that was b'shas the sakana, but they were mechanish a new kiyum in the mitzvahs hadlakas ne'es Chanuka. Now I could go ahead and I light inside instead of outside. Therefore, the Rishonim felt that if I have any reason to go ahead and light inside, not any, but they decided that nishba ruach is enough of a reason, windy is enough of a reason to go ahead and light inside. So they said, so the Dvar came along and said, Lofikach. Therefore, my Rebbe felt that you could go ahead and light inside, even though it's not a sakana. It's nishba ruach. It won't work out well, the fact that it's being lit outside because the wind's going to blow it out. Therefore, Zakter Dvar, that once I saw a new takana in takanas chazal, that it's not only when you light outside, so hu adin, I'll give you another hechatimtza, another scenario where it's convenient for us to light inside, and it'll be mutter to light inside because of nishba ruach. And many achronim went with these rishonim, even though in Shulchan Aruch it's not mentioned, but the Aruch HaShulchan goes with it. We'll see later on. The Nefesh Chaya goes with it. The Nemuka Chaim goes with it. And other achronim went with this svara of when it's windy outside, that today it's mutter to light. When it's windy outside, it's mutter to light inside because of the wind. Now, there are other rishonim that say other reasons. The Ben Yeruchim says another reason when it's mutter to light inside, and that is mishum the shchichi goyim v'ganvi. If there's ganovim coming along and taking away your menorah, the Siddur Ben Amram Goyin also writes this. Hachad now listim, they're going to steal your menorah. Now we don't see the svara again in the Torah of the Shulchan Aruch. We don't see in the Nosei Kelim that there's a new svara of stealing your menorah. We know for a mitzvah you're obligated to spend how much the chiyuv is by every mitzvah. So you don't have to put out this beautiful silver menorah. You could put out a menorah that's worth $1. And if they steal it, they steal it. Nothing's wrong. You're mechuyev to do the mitzvah. We don't see a heter in doing a mitzvah of just the fact that it could be stolen. And the svara is like we said before, obviously, that b'shas takanas chazal, there wouldn't be such a svara that I could light inside because the menorah would have been stolen. It's only after that we see that shasakana, that chazal misaken, in new makom for adlak, a new place to light Chanukah menorah. So therefore the Rishonim went along and said, you know what, I have another reason why maybe to light inside, and that is because the menorah will get stolen. So therefore, they gave you a heter to light inside because now that there is a new place to get a kiyum mitzvah of halakas ner Chanukah, so any reason that they thought of that the Rishonim came up upon, therefore that was enough of a matter to light inside. The Hilchos Chaim and the Kolbai, Hilchos Chaim and the Chanukah is Tezvav, the Kolbai and Sim Mem Dalid, bring another svara. Shema yichbu hagayim hadarim beinenu. Maybe the goyim, they'll have a good time and they'll blow it out. So they won't steal the menorah. They're afraid to steal the menorah, but they'll blow it out. That's enough of a svara to light inside. So therefore, the Rishonim felt that when we find svaras to go ahead and be makel to light inside, to give a reason why to light inside, there's going to be something missing in the hadlaka, something missing, something. Any svara that they could think of, either wind, the wind blowing, or ganovim are going to take away the menorahs, or the goyim are going to blow out the candles, that's enough for them to tell you a svara to light inside. So now let's see a little bit. We'll go through the tkufas from the Rishonim to Achronim, see where they lit in the days of Klal Yisrael, and see if it's negeya to Bizmanenu, us, people that live in Lakewood, in New York, in places that, the communities that there's only Yidden and there's no chashash at all that Goyim might blow it out, all those chashashes that we discussed. So Taisvis on the Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, the Ramaschal Dei, says that the Ri brings from the Ri, the Ata ein lochosh masa yadlik. You don't have to worry the time you light. The Anu ein lanu akeya lebnei abayis shem adlikim b'fnim. We light inside. The Taisvis times they lit inside. So too the Chuvas Rashbin Chelik Aleph Siman Tavkuf Mem Aleph says achshav shenagu shlo lahadlik b'chutz elo bebatim. They didn't light outside. They lit bebatim. The Chuvas Rivash, who's a little bit later, one of the later Rishonim says, Kivan she'ein anachnu yichaylim l'kayim ha-mitzvah. B'chutz, because now Yad U'ma is takfa aleinu, ve'ein anu yichaylim l'kayim ha-mitzvah b'chutz, u'madlik kol echad b'pesach b'esim b'fnim. You light inside, so his kufa, they also lit inside. And the Rosh, who's from the later Rishonim, Shabbos Perek B'esim and Gimel says, V'nir l'didan, she'anu madlikin ner Chanukah b'fnim. L'didan, us, we light inside. So that is a few hundred years of the Rishonim that where they lit inside. The Rama in Darkei Moshe in Siman Tafresh Ayin Aleph Eis Tes, in Darkei Moshe Siman Tafresh Ayin Beis Eis Dalet, and Shulchan Aruch Siman Tafresh Ayin Aleph Sif Zayin Sif Ches. He writes over there, Bizman Hazeh shemadlikin Beis HaChayev Dahainu B'fnim Mamish. So the Rama's days, he lit inside. He writes, V'cheinu aminik. The Levush, Talmud the Rama also, in Tafresh Ayin Aleph Sif Ches, writes, Ulididan sheyad u'ma is tkifa aleinu, ve'ein anu madlikim b'chutz b'roichavi, we don't light ela madlikim b'fnim. The Chaya Adam, 200 years after that, a Talmud Regayin, Klal Kuf Nodal Tzifit Beis writes, Bizman hazeh sh'anu da'am bein u'mais, min argeinu lahadlik kol echad b'beisai. He doesn't say it's sakana. He just writes sh'anu da'am bein u'mais. We live between the Goyim. Therefore, a person, the minig was to light inside the house. So we're going through many tkufas from the Rishonim to the later Achronim that they lit inside the house. They didn't light outside. Now the question is, even the way we explained it, that it's not a sakana, but there are other distractions. Why not to light? Why we don't light it outside? But what type of svar is that? Asks the Oizer Ruach Nechas Chanukah Siman Shin Chav Gimel. Va'idna deleka sakana. Lo yadana my time ain anu madlikim b'chatzayis. I'm very bothered, Dr. Oizer Ruach. How come we don't light outside? There's no sakana. Did the Oizer Ruach change his minig? It doesn't make a mention as that. The Oizer Ruach is the manik hadar, the pesach hadar. He didn't change his minig. He was bothered. How come Klal Yisrael didn't light outside? There was no sakana in his days. The Sefer Itter, Rishon, Chelik Beis, he comes to answer this question. And he writes as follows. He says, Ubeshas ha-sakana manicha al shulchanei v'dayai v'acha shenagu al sakana nagu. Once they were noyik to light outside, inside, they stayed with that takana. So he gave us an insight to the reason why we still light inside, which is because once Chazal were mesaken to us this takana of lighting inside, because it's a sakana, acha shenagu al sakana nagu, we stay with that minig of lighting inside. Now, what type of svar is that? That since they mesaken, but there's still a mitzvah of lighting outside. They weren't mevatel the mitzvah of lighting outside. The Itter is writing since acha shenagu al sakana nagu, and therefore you still should light inside because they were mesaken by b'shas sakana to light outside, inside. Therefore, continue lighting inside even after the sakana. So Rabbi Yashiv goes along to explain this Itter, and he says that's obvious and that's pashut. That if it wouldn't be a sakana at all, he would never write that a person should light inside. It's only after the fact that they were mesaken when there was a real sakana. They were mesaken that you should light inside. Now that there's somewhat of a sakana, or somewhat of a reason Why to light inside? That sakana stays, which means that takana stays, which means even though for the purpose right now, for the reason right now that you want to light inside is not enough of a reason why Chazal would have misaken for you to light inside. It's windy outside. Okay, so what? So make sure that the wind doesn't get to it. Put a glass over it. That would not be a reason why Chazal would go ahead for within itself and be misaken to light inside. It's only that once we were misaken, because there was once a tkufa in Klal Yisrael, which was a real sakana, the Chazal gave us a new takana of lighting inside. Therefore, if there's any continuation to any whatever reason why to light inside, you can light inside. But if today there will be absolutely no sakana at all, then you're obligated to go ahead and light outside. The heter of the iter wasn't that once the sakana was mesukin to light inside, that stays forever. And as long as Klal Yisrael is doing the mitzvah, they have to light inside. Rabbi Yashiv says that's not the pshat in the iter. The pshat in the iter is only because there's somewhat of a reason to light inside. Therefore, he tells you that could prohibit you, mutter for you to light now inside. So therefore, Rabbi Yashiv feels very strongly that a person should go ahead today and light outside if you're living within a place which is not a sakana. So now, we read the Chai Adam, which the Lavush says the same, and it comes from a Rishon, the Sefer Hanayar. The Ilmayit says it's just the same thing, that l'didan, that we live bein hagayim, kishas hasakanahu, and you put it inside your house. The Lavush says, l'didan sheyada umayz tkifa aleinu, the Goyim are ruling over us. Ve'ein onu madlikim b'chutz. We don't light outside because the Goyim are ruling over us, therefore we don't light outside. So, I'm sure you heard this tshuva of the Dvar Yeshua, Rav in Tel Aviv. He wrote in Chelik Aleph, Siman Mem. He writes a whole tshuva that he came to Eretz Yisrael and he doesn't understand that Yisrael was a Gadol Hadar. And like we said before, the Yisrael was bothered with a question. Today that there's no sakana, in his days there was no sakana, why don't we light outside? And he was bothered with the question, but he didn't answer the question. And he didn't change his meaning, and he still lit inside. Therefore he says, when he came to Eretz Yisrael and he saw people lighting outside, he says, what is the pshat in that meaning? Why are people lighting outside? They should go back to the old meaning of lighting inside, just like they did Bisman the Yishayim, like we said before, Bisman the Achrayim, Bisman the Ramah. Why did they switch the minig now to light outside? He says, whoever made up this new minig to light outside, to bring back Chadesh Shemenu Kekedem to light outside like B'Shasa wasn't a sakana, who is greater than the Oizeruah to go ahead and paskin like this? Of anyone that stayed with Oizeruah and didn't switch the minig in Klal Yisrael. Why would someone go ahead now and light outside? And he says, I'm telling you, there were many times that Klal Yisrael lived in places that it was only Yiddish neighborhoods and only Jews, and still they didn't change the minig. So why in Eretz Yisrael are they bothering to change the minig? And Rabbi Yashiv in Kaibash Shuvas Chelik Aleph Siman Samach Zayin, he comes to answer and he writes that the Iter, the Oizeruah was bothered with this question, but the Iter answer, like we just explained before, B'Shem the Sefer Iter, that the Sefer Iter says, once they were misaken, the sakana b'fnim, the sakana stays, the minig stays, and therefore you always light b'fnim. And Rabbi Yashiv explains, like we said earlier, the reason for that is because it's still somewhat of a sakana, but if it's not a sakana at all, and Yisrael felt it's not a sakana at all, therefore goes back to the original takana that you mechuyev to light outside. That's a little bit of a chiddush that the Dvar Yeshua was coming from the Oizeruah. So to say that the Iter argued on the Oizeruah is a chiddush, and more so, the Dvar Yeshua was bringing a raya from the Oizeruah. The Iter itself is debatable. Rabbi Yashiv has his pshat, the Pesach Hatvei on the bottom of the Itter, does not learn like that. He learns the pshat is that, no, once it was Mesukin, the light inside, that takana stays, even though there's no sakana at all. So Rabbi Yashiv argues on Svar with that. But the Dvar Yeshua was quoting the Izarua. The Izarua did light inside, even though he understood that today it wasn't a sakana at all. So therefore, it's a chiddush that Rabbi Yashiv wasn't okay with the Dvar Yeshua because he told him the Itter. But the Dvar Yeshua was coming from the Sefer Izarua. But the Dvar Yeshua continues on in that tshuva, and he says that once the minig, he brings rayas from the Gemara and Ksubis, that they were masakin, really, the Besula Nissis B'yam Revi, the person gets married on Wednesday, but then they were mavatal it for Tuesday, even though, because they were mavatal b'shas sakana, and that takana stay that you should stay to get married on Tuesday, even though the original takana was Wednesday. And he has a whole arichas and Rabbi Yashiv is matcha all those rayas, and therefore the Dvar Yeshua continues, and he says not only that I'm telling you to light inside, but if you light outside, you're not yaitza. And on that, Rabbi Yashiv writes very stark to connect him. How could you say such a thing that you're not yaitza? Not only do I feel that you're yaitza, but he felt that you should light outside, and don't tell me that it's sakana like we explained earlier. So we have a big machlekes between Dvar Yeshua and Rabbi Yashiv, and Rabbi Yashiv brings a very strong raya to his side. He says as follows: if the Dvar Yeshua is right, and a person should only light inside, because once the sakana was mesukin, once they gave this minig, this new minig of lighting inside, then Chazal kept the minig la'il me'elam that the adlakas ne'es Chanukah should be inside. So he's bothered. Why did the Rambam, the Tur, the Shulchan Aruch say the halacha b'chlal of lighting inside, of lighting outside? That's not negay of his manenu anymore. Why would they write such a halacha? So Dr. Vayashiv is mavur that halacha stays. And if you have a time in Tkufa and Klal Yisrael, you'll have any time in Klal Yisrael that it's not going to be a sakana, you should go ahead and light outside, and that's where you get your kiyum mitzvah, and not inside. Therefore, Dr. Vayashiv, the fact that the Shulchan Aruch wrote such a halacha, if the Shulchan Aruch came after the Tkufa of the sakana, which was originally Mesukin, B'shas Desman Bavli, and still the Shulchan Aruch felt, the Rambam, the Tur Shulchan Aruch felt that you have to write such a halacha, obviously the halacha stands, and the halacha is chayv v'kayim, and therefore, if it's a time which is not a sakana, a person should, and not only should, is mechuyev to light outside. That's how Vayashiv goes very strongly, and Londinsky brought down in Maria, Shana Gimel, Gimel and Dalet also saw this tshuva Dvar Yeshua, and he writes very strongly against it, and he says that we see that Gedolei Rishonim, and again he writes this, the Riv, the Rambam, the Rosh, the Torah, the Shulchan Aruch, they all bring this down la halacha about lighting outside. It can't be that we mevatel the whole thing of lighting outside. And he says, Ro'u ma'oid, not only that, he writes, Ro'u ma'oid lasais l'dava hazeh, taluma lahachze atar liyoshna, atar is mitzvah liyoshna. And don't think that the person's about gaiva for lighting outside, faket. He says he saw the Biskarov, the Chazanish, even though they were noyeg, they came from Europe, and in Europe they lit inside, but when they moved to Eretz Yisrael, they lit outside. Why? Because in Eretz Yisrael, there's no more shas sakana. So therefore, in a matzav, in a place, you live in a neighborhood where there's not a sakana, you go ahead and light outside. He writes, Londinsky writes, Nagu Amadaktikim b'Tel Aviv v'Yafo, and he brings from this Rav, Rabbi Yosef Tzvi Alevi, who was the Av Bez in Tel Aviv for 60 years, and he says he lit outside. So therefore, Tel Aviv is less than Bnei Brak. There were more non-frum Jews there, and you would be chayshish for, let's say, somewhat of a sakana or eva or something like that. And still they lit outside. So that is the minig. And it says to be machzah Torah liyashno. Everyone should go ahead and light outside. They were discussing Eretz Yisrael. What's with chutz la'aretz? Rabbi Yashiv in that same tshuva writes, Gam b'chutz la'aretz b'mokim shein sakana mitzvah lahadlik b'chutz. In a place where it's not a sakana, you live in a Jewish neighborhood, only Jews, you should light outside. The Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in Madane Shloimeh, written by Rabbi Chmiel Fried, he asked him, Rabbi Fried, who lives in America, he asked him Shlomo Zalman, should he light outside or inside? So Shlomo Zalman says, Einoi mevin klal, madua einoigim mechutz la'aretz m'koyim shaleka hayom sakana. I don't understand at all. People live in chutz la'aretz in a place where it's not a sakana. Lahadlik ner Chanuka b'fnim. Why are they lighting the neirs inside? And the shayil, Rabbi Fried, asked him. He said maybe because there's still some places in chutz la'aretz that it is sakana. And Shlomo Zalman said you can't make a minig on something which is not a true minig. The minig is to light outside. People light inside because of a sakana, but that shouldn't change the minig. And therefore, Zakir Shlomo Zalman very sharp. He told you, Chmiel Fried, you have to light outside where it's not a sakana. If you live in a neighborhood where it's not a sakana, he writes like Borough Park and Williamsburg. Over there, he says you're obligated to light outside. At the end of the page on that Madane Shloimeh, he brings that Shlomo Zalman's son, Rameir Simcha, heard from Shlomo Zalman that there is a mokum to hear that in chutz la'aretz you could light outside, inside, but really Shlomo Zalman felt very strongly like Rabbi Yashiv that a person should light outside in chutz la'aretz.
What about the wind? And what about the kula highlight techura banan and schuchit?
Okay, so you caught me to it. We're not finished. I hope no one leaves yet, and we're not done. We still have another half hour, right?
As long as the Rav wants.
Okay, so now, this was what Shlomo Zalman and Rabbi Yashiv felt, and now Rabbi Gottesman is saying his Mereg Talmud Chacham, he's saying this Lashonis of the Aruch HaShulchan, and let's quote the Aruch HaShulchan, let's read it inside, and from there we'll see what he's referring to. The Aruch HaShulchan starts off very strongly, very interesting ways to start off. He doesn't start discussing sakana, not sakana, he starts off with a sentence as follows. Ata ein onu madlikim b'chutz. We do not light outside, period. Va'av she'ein sakana atzleinu. You're asking a very good question. Where the lighting in front of windows? We're going to speak about that in Mitzvah Hashem. We'll get to that. Zok Aruch HaShulchan. Today you do not light b'chutz. You do not light. Finished. Now the Aruch HaShulchan is trying to find reasons why you don't light. He said you don't light b'chutz, even though it's not a sakana. Mikol makom kematu min amnois mnei shechol medina shalanu yimei Chanuka it heim yimei sigru geshem v'sheleg v'ruchais chazakim. It's windy, it's cold, it's snowy. Therefore, the efshel alicham b'chutz. But what could you do? Im loy lasgirim b'schuchis. You could close it up like we know. You could buy it for a few dollars. You could buy this glass, the metal box with the glass door, and you go ahead and you can light it. Zakta v'kula hayla chachur abanon. That much, the Rabbanon will not matriach you to do. Now, this is a very interesting Aruch HaShulchan. I mean, kula hayla chachur abanon. Is that really so much of a tircha to get that box and a glass box? It costs a few dollars. Every other mitzvah we tell you, lulav and esther, you spend as much as it costs. Here we're talking about the ikkiya mitzvahs to light outside. And kula hayla chachur abanon. Is this such an expensive tircha that we tell you that the Chachamim couldn't be mechayiv you to do? Let's continue on. V'oid de bazel lo yehekel mitzvah. Another reason. With this, it wouldn't be such a good hekel mitzvah kol kach. People aren't going to see it as well, probably because the box is covering part of the menorah. And the gam loy b'chalam mekamis yanichol lasos kach. Another reason, maybe they won't let you some places. So you see that the Aruch HaShulchan is looking for a reason that I don't want you lighting outside. So he's looking for excuses, which we would see those excuses, we would see the very minimal excuses, really pretty weak excuses. But the Aruch HaShulchan, who was the Paisik of pre-war, and he's coming and explaining, I don't want you lighting outside. And here is the key words of the Aruch HaShulchan. V'lachein kulanu madlikin bebayis. The Aruch HaShulchan said, I know there are people that want to act from, and I know that people live in Jewish neighborhoods, and I know people are going to tell me these reasons aren't good reasons. Kula hayla chachur abanon, on the Alminim I spend $200, $300, $400. on a menorah, I can't spend another $10 for that glass box. Still, I need that everyone should be on the same page. Dr. Kulanu, madlikim bebayis. We need everyone to lighten the house. And that is the punchline of the Aruch HaShulchan. Again, the first line, the first sentence, Ata ein anu madlikim bechutz. We do not light outside. And then reasons, we could see these reasons and have a little discussion on them. None of them are too strong to tell me a sakana, but still, kulanu madlikim bebayis. I want everyone to light in the bayis, and it's very understandable. And if Shmuel Kamenetsky goes with this, and if Shlomo Miller goes with this, and all the Gedolei HaPoskim, Rav Ruben Shel Gedolei HaPoskim in America say that we can't have that someone decides his neighborhood is a safe neighborhood, and it really is a safe neighborhood. You haven't have a Gentile or anyone step in there besides a Frum Yid, step into that neighborhood. For 10 years, there hasn't been a Frum Yid, that non-Frum Jew that walked into this neighborhood. That does not give you a heter to light outside. I want everyone on the same page, lighting inside. That is what the Aruch HaShulchan is quoting. Therefore, even though you could think of a svara why today it's not a sakana and there's no eva and there's no tsar, they're not going to throw a rack at your menorah, still we should go ahead. We live in Chutz La'aretz. We don't know that you're right, your neighborhood, but someone else is going to learn the same thing from you, and someone that doesn't live in such a Jewish neighborhood, and he would start lighting outside, and that's going to cause eva. So we don't know the degree of eva that could come because someone saw that in Chutz La'aretz someone lit outside. This is all for Chutz La'aretz, not for Eretz Yisrael. We're not discussing Eretz Yisrael. We're discussing people that live in Chutz La'aretz. Therefore, we are not big enough to say Keneged this Aruch HaShulchan, and not only that, if Shmuel Kamenetsky, when he heard the Yashiv Psak, he said, but we know what's going on in Chutz La'aretz, and we understand what Eva is, and we understand what Tsar is, and we understand what type of sakana could come out of this, even though the place where you live right now, it's not as so, but others might learn from you, other people that don't live in this from a neighborhood like you do, and they figure, why don't I light? And a person that could end up coming that in his neighborhood, it does come to Tsar, Eva, Sakana, B'chulu. Therefore, the Aruch HaShulchan felt very strongly that you should light the bayis, and that's why the minig in Chutz La'aretz is to light the bayis, and we stay with that minig, because that's what the Aruch HaShulchan and our Gedolei HaPoskim felt very strongly should be lit outside. Now, the question is as follows, which someone brought it up, is, if so, why are we lighting by the window? And let me explain that question. The Gemara, which we started off said that there are 3 places to light. Ner Chanukah, madlikim b'chutz. You light outside. B'shas, if you live on the 2nd floor, you can't light your front door, no one's going to see. Put it by the window. Now, b'shas sakana, put it on your dining room table, close the window shades, no one sees it, and you get the mitzvah. So the question is, if so what are we dealing with? Today we're saying that even though it's not a sakana, but we're giving it a din as a sakana. So b'shas the sakana, they lit in the dining room table. Why are we lighting by a window? Where'd the window come from? The window wasn't b'shas the sakana. The window was in a time that you couldn't light in the front door because you didn't have a front entrance, because you live on the 2nd floor. Go ahead and light by the window. But just to make a new takana, which the Gemara doesn't say, the Rishonim don't say, where did our window come from? Now that's a very good question. And if we look in the Rishonim, we don't see a mention of this chalayin. And the first sefer that mentions is the Magen Avraham, and it's the Magen Avraham's chiddush, but we go with it because everyone quotes the Magen Avraham, the Shulchan, the Mishabur, the Chai Adam, they're all going with the Magen Avraham. But the Magen Avraham came up with a new suggestion, which is as follows. The Magen Avraham in Sivkat and Ches says, "V'nearly the im yesh loy chaloin hasamach l'shus rabim yanichenu b'chaloin the bazeh leke chashash sakana." There isn't such a chashash sakana. Therefore, im loy b'makoim the shchia chazeka. Zok the Magen Avraham. a new taich in the Gemara. The Gemara that said that b'shas sakana menicha shechana v'daya, you put it on the table. That's if the table is the only option. But if it's not such a great sakana, and I have an option to put it by the window, they're not going to be throwing rocks through my window. They'll be okay with it. Zokt the Magen Avraham, put it by the window. So again, the Magen Avraham is the first one. He says v'nir li, that means it's his own svar that tells you that you should go ahead and put it by the window. Therefore, only in a time he's magdir b'makom the loy b'makom the shchir chazeka. If it's shchir chazeka, don't stop the window also. But if it's not shchir chazeka, then we should go ahead and light it by the window. Now, the Pri Megadim quotes this on this Magen Avraham and Eshel Avraham Sivkat Ches says, "Kein noyeg miktzas b'nei Adam." He doesn't say that halacha psuka like the Magen Avraham. He says there are some people miktzas b'nei Adam are noyeg like this. Therefore, it's dispassionate by many Hasidic houses that they don't light tzans and others. They don't light by the window. They will light by the door in the middle of the house. Any entranceway, they light by that door. Okay, it could be saying that it wasn't common glass windows. I don't know the history, but it could be. But Akapanim, the Magen Avraham is saying that B'shas, the Pri Megadim is telling you that the window is not a definite. The Magen Avraham said this window, it's not definite by everyone. That doesn't have to be the halacha psuka. But again, the Chai Adam says it, Kitshachanach says, the Mishabura says it, and many, many others. The Yom in the Chanukah brings that his Zayda, the Asayas Tshuva did it, and he says the Ksav Seifer did it, the Chachsam Seifer did it, the Chavetz Chaim, they bring down Haggis Chavetz Chaim, he lit by a window. The Shulchan says the Chain Ani Noyeg Lahalik B'Chalain, he himself lit by the window. The Liban Halachas brings the Shabin HaRav did it, so therefore it was done by many to light by the window. Now, Moshe Zatzal, David Feinstein, his son Zatzal, Zechatzadik L'Bracha, also they lit by the window. That from there won't be a riot because they lived on the second floor. But like upon him, we see that was the minig in Klal Yisrael. They went with the Magen Avraham to light by the window. But the question now is, how much did the Magen Avraham change from lighting b'fnim? Which means, we understand now that the Magen Avraham is giving us a good option to light by the window to get also that outsiders should see it. But did he say that that's really like hadlaka b'chutz? Or we're still lighting by a dining room table? There's a mile of also lighting by the window, which means a simple case. Someone has a menorah that has a back towards it, and you only can see it from one side. It has a wall behind one of the sides of the menorah, so it's only visible from one side. Should I light that towards my inside, or I should light that towards outside that the people outside should see? If the Magen Avraham means that now that there's a window, I should go ahead and light it for b'chutz. You just don't light it by the entranceway, by outside, because we mavakel that takana like we explained till now. So, but if I have a chetimtza to light it outside, which is by lighting it through the window, then I should go ahead and face my menorah towards the Neir Shesarabim. Or the Magen Avraham agrees to what we said till now, that really bismanenu that loka is to light inside, and the Pesach Manes is for your own family, for the own members in the house itself. But he's telling you, I would like that you should also get somewhat of a kiyum of people outside, walking outside. So therefore, go ahead and light it outside. Light it by the window. But if I have a chetimtza which is only going to be visible on one side, that should be facing inwards and not outwards. So Alpi Pashtis, the Magen Avraham was not coming to argue on the whole Hanochas that we had till now, and he's not coming to argue on the Ramah. He's going on the Ramah. The Ramah says that you light inside, and that's what he says. That was a minig. So he's just adding that if a person could, he should light it by the window, because why not get that person also? But that's not the Ikka Chiyuv. The Ikka Kiyam HaMitzvah is to go ahead and light it for the insides, for the people that are in the house. Yeah, that's a good question. What about sideways? The window's fine. Okay, we'll try to discuss everything. The time is running. Yeah. So let's discuss this follows. Today there are glass screen doors. or some people even have the main door, they have the side of the door glass. Should you rather light your menorah by that inside, again, not outside? We said outside, that's not the meaning of chutz lights. So you're lighting inside your house. We said to light by a window. Fine, that's the Magen Avraham, and that's all the Gedolei HaPoskim. So you're lighting by your window. But now, shouldn't I try to gain also a kiyum mitzvah of lighting by the door? We know the mezuzah biyamin, right? So therefore, and the Chanuka v'smal. So therefore, I'll get all those kiyumim and have a window because my screen door has a window towards it. So now there's another halacha which we're not going to get involved in, is that l'katchila a person should light his menorah with under 10 tvachim. So many times there will be a milah within a screen door. Yeah. Okay. How many bnei bayis? Okay, that's another question. Okay, let's try to focus on the. Yeah, that's a good question. So let's again. Let's just go. So if a person would light on the screen door, many times you'll have the milah of a delis on the chatzah delis, and also you'll have a milah that people could see from outside. So really, if someone has a screen door, and clearly again he has another entrance way how to come into the house, because if this is the only entrance way he comes into his house, and he has children going in and out, then the chashash is that the menorah is going to fall. So do not put it there. But let's discuss someone that has a side entrance and he has a front entrance. And from that front entrance, he could close the door the whole night. He could close the screen door and it could be locked. He's not chayshish that goyim are going to come. And you'll be able to see it outside. That is definitely a hidur. Definitely. But is the person obligated to do it? Absolutely not. He's not obligated. We light b'fnim, and we will madlik also with the Magen Avraham b'chalayin. But if someone could come to the heichatimtza, there's no reason why not to, and he gets another heater of lighting by the door. But again, this should not come to lighting outside. Lighting outside should not be done. Lighting by the door inside through a screen, which people can see on the outside, that's loigara from a chalayin, from a window. And if you'll get the kiyum of inside and outside, that should be done again. Most probably, many people can't do this. And let me tell you another scenario why people can't do this. And this is also important to know. If your screen door, if your house door, your front door is on the side of the house, and your dining room or wherever you plan on lighting, the chalayin, is more pasumi nisa for inside the house, then don't let that door win you over and light by the door. Because the Ikke Pasumei Nisa, like we said, is for Bnei Abayis, for inside the house. It's not for Bechutz. So if your door is going to make anywhat less of a person for Befnim, do not light it by the door. Our minig is not to light by the door. We're just telling you that if you could have a window by the door, then, and your same Pasumei Nisa by the door would be by the window, then Enechanami, you should go ahead and light by the door to get this Kiyam Hida. Again, only if you don't have to go ahead, you have another entranceway, v'chulu v'chulu. But if it's going to stop any one of a person of the inside of the Bnei Bayis, do not go ahead and do that.
And how do you count this? You have to actually make a count. You have 8 people inside. You have to count the people walking on the street. How meduyuk do you have to be here to calculate this person versus person?
Right. So that's a good ara, and really we can. I mean, that'll be a very hard agdara to be magda. That'll be almost an impossible. So what we have to do is as follows: we have to look for the best window in the house that would go ahead and be for inside the house. First, we have to deal with us inside. Is this a good destination? I mean, some people, they decide that, you know what, my study is a good place. Like this, I'll close the door after 10 minutes. That's not the right mahalach. It has to be done that it's the best window that people would see in the house. It could be a dining room, it could be a kitchen, wherever it is. If that's the most noticeable in the house, that we don't care about the outside. First, we have to deal with where you're in your house, where you'll see it the most, where you walk the most, where you'll see it if through the hallway, whatever it is, that's where it should be dealt with. Then, if you could get a kiyum of outside also, which means that you'll, like we said, the front door, if you have a screen door or something like that, that's okay. You're not obligated to buy a screen door either to try to get this either. You want to do it? It's a nice thing maybe. But don't go ahead and now turn over your house to buy a screen door and let's go, we're getting new editions. That's not an obligation. The obligation is to light inside, and the Magen Avraham was Meisif to light it by a window. Now, I actually wrote a tshuva on this just 2-3 days ago, and I wrote the maskana about writing inside. So Moshe Matchikap from Eretz Yisrael, someone sent him my tshuva, and he wrote back that he's not going to want to pass him Chutz La'aretz, but he thinks that we still should light outside in shchunas that aren't the sakana. But again, we're staying strong that the minig in Chutz La'aretz is to light inside, and that's what Agadala Paiskim in Chutz La'aretz told us. Shmuel Kamenetsky, like we said before, Shlomo Miller, and many, many others that I discussed it with, all agreed that the minig did not change, and we still light inside, and like we saw very strongly from the Aruch HaShulchan, to light inside. Now, so the question is as follows. Now that we established that you're supposed to light inside, so am I mechuyev to worry about this man? Today that I'm lighting inside, why should I worry about this man? I'm lighting for my Bnei Abayis. My Bnei Abayis is still up 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever they're around. And whoever was up at 5 o'clock is up at 7 o'clock. And whoever was up at 7 o'clock is up at 9 o'clock. So therefore, is there any obligation for me to try to rush and get to that Zman, whichever Zman it is, the Shkia, or you light the Tzeis, or you light your Baron, whatever Zman you feel your minig is to light, am I obligated to run for that Zman? Or anyways, I'm lighting for the Pnim, and since I'm lighting for the Pnim, I don't have to go ahead and worry about a time, because Pnim is Pnim, and whenever the Bnei Abayis are around, I don't have to make my wife come home on time, anything, my children, I could just go ahead and light when everyone's around. So the Ramah, who's the one that says Menagenu Madlikim B'Pnim, the Ramah in Simcha Tafeshayim Beis of Beis says Umikal Mokan. He starts off that you don't have to be nizer in this. Why? Because why should you have to be nizer in something which is there's no obligation for the chutz? Therefore, but he ends off still, Zakter Ma, still, even though you're not obligated to do that, still a person should be nizer bizman hazeh with the right time and right the zman adlaka, like we said before, either it's tzeis or shkia or a ban, whatever you're trying to come to. That could be a different discussion where Baron's man came from. So then it was a chiddush of Ipsak, but that's not for now. And therefore, Zakter Ramah, Tavli Zar. Now, where is the Ramah coming from? Why should you be Tavli Zar? Zak de Be'alacha, the Be'amaschel Mikol Makan. Sha'afa Pisha Madlikin B'Pnim, even though we light inside, Kivan Shemadlikin B'Pesach HaBayis, V'hu Pasuach, Yesha Keir La'ovim B'Shavim. Since we are lighting for outside somewhat, he's talking about Pesach HaBayis, we could discuss our Magen Avraham with Chalain. So therefore, there is a heker for Ovim B'Shavim. Therefore, Zakter Mo, it's Toiv Lizar to go ahead and light Bisman Hazeh also with the right time. Now, it's very interesting that the Ramah should be quoting, he brings the Be'alacha, quoting from the Torah. Because the Ramah in the Darkei Moshe on the Torah argues very strongly on the Torah, and he says a different reason. He says the reason why you should light on time, he quotes a Maril, and the Maril quotes a Mari Segel, the beginning of Chanuka, that says, Shehidlik Neyosef ki ama mitzvah Chanuka mishetishka chamo. That is the mitzvah. He doesn't say anything because the people outside. It's because that is just the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to light on Shkia, that mitzvah stayed. That means the Ramah felt, when he quoted that Maril, that it's not because the view is outside. It's because that is the Zman HaMitzvah. And once that was the Zman HaMitzvah, that takana stays. And not only that, the Aruch HaShulchan himself says that. The Aruch HaShulchan brings the Ramah in Sivav, and he says, K'dei lasis takanas chachamim v'roiv Yisrael nizharim gam atal halik b'azman shakav chachamim. Today we stayed with that takana. So too in Siv Daled, he says, Kol ma she'ef shalashas k'tikin chachamim eisen. Whatever we still could stay with, we still should continue on with. So therefore, it's mashma not like the Be'alacha, Yeah, he's bringing up a good Nakuda of Daniel Khan is bringing up these Makdim. We'll get to that in a mitzvah in a minute. Therefore, a person should go ahead. Chashulchan and the Maril is mashma. The pshat and the Ramah is, and Shevet Alevi goes within Chelik Yud Aleph, Simukuf Samach Beis Eis Aleph. Says also the reason why we should light on time is because Kol Masha Tiknu Tiknu. Now, there's obviously another reason, like he just mentioned, was because Zriza Makdimin, which is also a very good reason. But Zriza Makdimin doesn't obligate you to stop work or to make your wife rush home when she's not available, or whatever it is. Zriza Makdimin is not a mechay. But the Ramah says Tayv Lizar. So now, again, Me'ikr Adin today, the halacha stays that we're lighting b'fnim, and this man doesn't really make that much of a difference like the Ramah says Me'ikr Adin. There's a Tayv Lizar, which anytime a person's not at work, he definitely should try to be makbid on this Tayv Lizar. Why not? Get this Tayv Lizar on their Ramah. The Ramah says Tayv Lizar to be madlik this manner. But Alpi Pashtis, it's not because the outsiders, it's more because, like we're seeing in the Maril, the way the Ramah and Moshe quotes it in the Chashulchan, because whatever you still can hold on to the takana, you still should do. But it's not ma'akiv. That's very important. Again, we can't go into every detail when any hechatimtza that it should be, but it's very important to know that if that is this man, it's very negay lagabe eating. If someone's on the road and he's not going to come home till 7 o'clock, if he's allowed to eat, if that's called his man a mitzvah, again, we can't go into that. That's another whole shir that we can't discuss that now, but that would make enough communion in how you learn the pshat in this Ramah that says the Tayv Lizar. But the reason why it's Tayv Lizar, it's all after the fact that we're lighting inside. In Eretz Yisrael, that the lighting outside, like we said over the Chazon Ish and the Biskarov, and all the Gedolei HaPoskim of Yashav Shem Zalman, they all felt that in Eretz Yisrael, there's no sakana at all, and the minig is to light outside. Therefore, over there, definitely the Zman is ma'akiv, and that's why they try to light the moment the Zman starts. Yes. The Nil Khan is bringing up a very good Nakuda Matzah Shabbos, is there Inyan to rush. Yeah, that's a big machlokes, and maybe we could discuss it in private. There's a lot to be discussed on that. I don't think we have time. I want to just say one more nakuda to this, to just this musig that Rabbi Gaddisman and all you members that are following the shir, and it seems like you started with that crawl, with that cry that the Rebbeinu Shalom sent us this virus. And from there, the Rebbeinu Shalom was calling Mila Hashem Elai, who's on my team, who's going to change because I did a Magefa to Klal Yisrael, I did a Magefa to the whole world, but we know every Magefa only comes because of us Jews. And the Rebbeinu Shalom called out Mila Hashem Elai. And here you have Balabatim that are ready to go ahead and sit in the middle of the day. This is the middle of working hours. And to go ahead and to start harving on sugis, not just learning quick and just not understanding faket, trying to understand the sugya from the top, from the Gemara, to come down till the Shulchan Aruch, till the Mishabur, till the Lamaisa. It's an unbelievable machshava that came to Lamaisa. You know, everyone's bothered. The Gemara says, Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chav Gimel Lamed Beis, the Gemara says, Kol haragel b'nei v'lo Bunim Talmidei Chachamim. You ragel b'nei, you'll have children Zeichi, you'll have children Talmidei Chachamim. Rashi says it's Ner Shabbos v'Ner Chanukah. So everyone's bothered. We have many people. We all light Ner Chanukah, and we don't see that every one of our children should be Tabanim Talmidei Chacham. We're almost powerful for that, but everyone should have that. And the Rebbe Neravid is bothered with this question. It's brought down in Sefer Zakaron to the Baal Pachad Yitzchak, and he says because many are madlik, but they don't know what they're being madlik. They don't understand what the hadlaka is. And what does that mean? We know we say Zaydim biyad oiskei seyasecha. We say in Al Anisim. Zaydim biyad oiskei seyasecha. They were mazed the mezidim against the oiskei seyasecha. It's a very interesting term. Oiskei seyasecha. It should have been said loimdei seyasecha. What's oiskei seyasecha? And the answer is that oiskei seyasecha means that someone goes ahead. It's not just that he learns Torah like another study. It's someone that takes the Torah seriously. And he makes it his business. Oiske. The same way he has his business, his deals, his real estate, his whatever he does. Torah is the same business by him. He makes it He makes it that is his business. Every day he doesn't go a day without learning. And when he learns with a geschmack, and he learns be'in, and he puts his kaiches into it. That's what the Yevonim couldn't, that's what bothered the Yevonim. They didn't care about the Londinsky people that are just learning like a regular study. They bothered them. He knew that the Kiyam and Klal Yisrael is the Oiske Se'esecha, the people that take the learning and they make an asik out of it. They make it their business. That's what bothered the Yevonim. They knew that's what holds Klal Yisrael. That's the Kiyam of Klal Yisrael. And Kolzman Klal Yisrael's in Golis. That's the only place where the Shechina is B'yad Oiske Se'esecha. Having such a share is Oiske Se'esecha. It's not just that I'm learning just to learn up and to finish it, to finish up. It's learning to understand it, learning to appreciate it. Learning Hilchos Chanuka b'Yom Chanuka is, what's that for? To understand the mitzvah. Not just to do the mitzvah, just to be yaitza. To do it with an understanding. And to look for a hider. And to look for something that maybe I didn't do as well. Maybe I didn't put it by the right window. Maybe I didn't, wherever, all the halachas that you're going to be learning. That's what bothers Yevonim, and that's our netzachem. And that comes to the cry, the Chashmonaim's cry, Mila Hashem Elai, who's coming onto their tzavah, their army. That's us here, sitting and learning. So when we're lighting Adlokas Neres Chanukah, it's not just the light of the candles. It's thinking what the candles resemble. What is it? What's the simon of the candles? Oyer is Torah, Ner Chanukah is Ner Torah. That's what it resembles. So when we're lighting the Chanukah Menorah, we could say, yes, we are coming to the cry. We are coming to understand it's not just that plain musig of lighting a Chanukah Menorah. It's with what lies within the Chanukah Menorah. We're going to take our lives and we're going to make a change. We're going to be Isaac. We're going to do something extra because we understand that is our Kiyam of Klal Yisrael. That is our specialty. We're not just Londinsky Se'esecha, we're Isaac Se'esecha. You have a Gemara, the Geschus of Shloimeh. Hashem should give you all kayach, all the listeners should give you kayach to weiter. Enjoy and appreciate the mitzvahs that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us, to understand the mitzvahs, to be Isaac in the mitzvah, and forget all the shilas. I'm sorry, I don't have time to get to it. Maybe a different time, Mitzvah Hashem, to come to the rest of the shilas, but I'll upon him. Again, thank you for listening. You should all be zeicha. We should be zeicha to really come to that hadless, neis bechatzis kachecha, genug mit the shilas with chalonis and Psalchem, it should be Bechatzis Kachecha in the Beis Hamikdash Meheya v'Yameinu. This man still Tavshin Pei Aleph. Thank you for listening.
Amen. Yeshikayach. First of all, there are already questions for the vikuach between Agon HaRav Londinsky and Rav Moshe Marchakarv. Already questions. Zaylam would like to see the Masa Matan. Already got here in the chat. I just want to mention L'Kvayt HaTzibur, since the Rav spoke beautifully about the Mishtafim. I want you to know there are Mishtafim who come on for 3 hours a day, almost the same as a Seder Yeshiva, like a first Seder. Yeah, 2 hours and then an hour at night for extra and Chazara. So this is the quality of the Balbatim that we have today.
Okay, I wouldn't call them Balbatim. I call them Yeshiva Light. What?
Yeshiva Light, 100%. Okay, just 1 or 2 questions we'll take. And there was my Zayda was very chashav Talmid Chacham, living in an apartment building in Williamsburg. I remember it was on the 4th floor. I was a young boy, and he lit at the door of his room that used as a study room. This is a European Shongar Sheminik. Not sure exactly where it came from. And when I asked him once why not light at the window? So first of all, there was the Shaila of Lamala Mesrim anyway, and therefore he felt that was the most Pesum Nisa, even though it wasn't the Pesach outside, it was an internal Pesach. The Vuvet learned the halacha from the Gemara of Chanukah and spoiled of the mezuzah. Why isn't that in part of the cheshbon? Did anyone want to comment on that?
Yes. So again, we quoted the Magen Avraham that was mechadish nearly to light by the window, but that was the Magen Avraham's chiddush. We quoted the Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim says miktas noyegin kei. So now, like you said, like you mentioned, the miktas shaylas is chatzi tshuva. What you said was that it was l'mayla me'eser mama. L'mayla me'eser mama. There's a whole Ramosha about that, a tshuva, that l'mayla me'eser mama, if I'm facing other apartment buildings, would that be a pisum anes for the others? But that's a chiddush. So l'mayla me'eser mama, al pi pashtus, you're not yaitza b'chlal for pisum anes for outside. So he felt, now I have the option to go ahead and light by an entranceway, which is not the front. It doesn't make a difference. I would rather have the mezuzah b'yamin, ner Chanukah v'smut. So I would rather try to get that inyan better than any window. Again, the window by him was l'mayla metzamam was b'di'evet, and like we said, even the window the achalkim, as we quoted the Pri Megadim. Therefore, he felt, which was a right, which you're saying is a Talmid Chacham, which is you see in what he did, that he was a Talmid Chacham, and he lit by a door, and especially a door to the study, and he felt Mustama there was more hecker, people would see it more in the Bnei Abayis, and therefore he did what was right. He doesn't need my askama, but yeah, he did.